Pray with me. God, the Father, Mother, that you have made yourself present in an ineffable way in the extreme love that our brother Jesus has lived, may we not stop at him, but that his word always be an example for us on the way to realizing your will, the reign of life and love. Amen. On this day, the text invite us to a deep reflection on the ways of God of many names, who plant gardens of life for his people, and who call us precisely to live according to that idea. The ways to reach that garden of life are not those of the conceited and alienated individual. Everything a social system builds on exploitation, abuse of law, discrimination, racism, and falsehood ends up hopelessly condemned to insignificance. This contrast between the excessive pretensions of certain power-hungry individuals and groups that the bottom-mass ways of Jesus is evident in the Gospel's story. Halfway to Jerusalem, that is, at the exact halfway point in the process of formation of the disciples, Jesus interrogates them about what they have been able to grasp in the time that he has accompanied and guided them. The answer surprises us. On the one hand, the crowd following Jesus correctly identifies him as one of the prophets. On the other hand, the group in Peter's voice correctly recognizes him as Messiah and Son of God. But there remains a basic problem. Both the multitude and the disciples want to impose on Jesus a particular style of being a prophet and a particular way of being Messiah. Disciples and crowds ask for what is contrary to God's will and inconsequential to Jesus' teaching. It would seem that Jesus' enormous effort had not had the expected impact, and that the disciples, instead of changing their mindset, had entrenched their old and erratic ideas. However, the gospel wants to show us that disciples must still go through the experience of the cross to understand the true scope of Jesus' words and work. Jesus is Messiah, but not a triumphalist and overbearing Messiah of exacerbated nationalism, but a person at the service of the deepest human causes. Jesus is a prophet, but not a prophet who proclaims the supremacy of his own religion or the ideology of his group, but the prophet of love, justice, and peace. The readings show us how unpredictable and accurate the paths of God are, and how schematic our tribe paths are. The gospel invites us to learn from Jesus what is the authentic way that leads us to the divine, because not everyone who says, God, God, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Jesus' question, and you, who do you say I am, is also addressed to each of us, to MCC as a denomination, to MCCDC, to me as an elder. Who do I say that Jesus is? What is Jesus to me? And it demands more from us than a theological, elaborate response, a commitment to personal response, which my attitudes, with my dedication, with my testimony of life. Like the multitudes who follow Jesus and the disciples, we may be in a real danger of wanting to impose a vision of what we expect God to be. But we must have the supreme value of letting God be God and striving to be fully human and supportive of those around us, making the garden of life where we have to flourish a better place for all people without any distinction. We must reveal our faith with our actions that correspond to the message of the gospel. This message remains current and very demanding of concrete actions on behalf of all people. I would like to take this opportunity to share the testimony of a man of God who responded extensively with his life and actions rather than with words, who on August 13 concluded his journey here on earth, leaving us a concrete example of a true witness of Jesus of Nazareth, always committed to the rights of the indigenous and exploited in Araguaia, Brazil, Don Pedro Casaldáliga. Without any doubt, a mystical bishop, of one who perspired Jesus from every pore in his body, whom the Vatican hierarchy considered a revolutionary, but whom, on the other hand, was known as the Bishop of the Poor, the Bishop of the People, Father of the Last, although he always liked to be called the Bishop of the Forgotten. We can certainly say that he incarnated the same gospel in his life. He was always a man of integrity in the service of those who always remain on the shore, forgotten by all powers, including church leaders, as well as victims of savage capitalism. Always threatened with death by landowners who exploited the peasants, he slept with the door of his house open. His room was small, with two cots, one free, so that if someone without a roof would pass and had nowhere to sleep, they could stay. On one occasion, he went by bus to Brasilia for a meeting of the Brazilian Episcopal Conference. It took him an eternity to arrive, and the bishops asked him why he lost all that time. Casaldáliga replied, I lost the same time that my peasants lost to come and sell a sack of corn. The authenticity of his life was always so evident to those who treated him and shared his ministry. Starting with the humblest, that if today it were the ordinary people, as in the early church, who declared the holiness of a person, he will have already been canonized as a saint of the Church. His coherence as a bishop, stripped of material goods to the end, his deep gaze, his natural simplicity, his concern, and his constant struggle for the forgotten of the earth, for all those who suffer persecution, for the nameless and those without hope. It was this that conquered those who would ignore him. Don Pedro Casaldaliga was a symbol and a flag of struggle and peace at the same time throughout his life, without caving in, even in the hardest moments, as when they murdered a priest who was mistaken for him. If Casaldaliga was the bishop of the forgotten, of the unnamed, he also said that his heart was full of names. At the end of life, they will say to me, have you lived? Have you loved? And I, without saying anything, will open my heart full of names. This is a clear example of answering with life the pressing question we received from Jesus this Sunday. Are we living with intensity our response? Are we being supportive rights defenders, anti-racism fighters, and peace promoters in this difficult time that we have to live? May our lively answer to the question, who am I to you, be a light and a flourish garden for many people. Amen.